Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Today we're going to analyze the late pick 5 at Gulfstream. There's some nice betting opportunities early in the sequence, I think. So I think it's worth consideration for your wagering strategies. It is opening day for baseball, but I think this is worthy of a look. So let's see what we have. The first leg of the late pick 5 at Gulfstream is the 10th. It is the Sand Springs and ungraded stakes for 4-year-old filly and mares, 4-year-old and up. And it's at 1.16 on the turf. The first contestant is number 1, Love in the Air, at 6-1. This one just won an optional claimer, so this is a step up in class. There's a couple of things about this one that give me pause for concern. Number 1, she's 0 for the distance, has never won at 1.16, which I think is a problem. And secondly, she likes to run on the front end, will definitely be a pace presence, but she's also got Sweet Enough in this race who wants to do the same thing. So I think it's going to be very difficult for this one to get away on the engine and settle like she wants to. So I think those two things make her a little prohibitive, and I'm going to toss her. Sweet Enough, as mentioned, is also one who wants to be on the engine. The Honey Fox was not so great a race last time. But basically had things in her favor with the early running, but Faith in Humanity just was too much, and this one sort of wilted. You couple that with the Pegasus, where she was on the engine for that one as well, and was totally outclassed and just fell right back. I tend to believe this one maybe isn't so great. The other problem is this one can get very rank, and also can be very washy. And those two things make her kind of hard to trust. And 20-1 isn't a bad price, but I think there's better options here, and she's going to be a toss for me. Juza is an Irish import. Graham Motion hasn't been doing so great with his first time off importers. But he's a patient trainer, so he tends to take his time with them, and you can see he's 0 for 15 with the first North American start, so I'm not expecting an A effort out of this one right away. Secondly, you look at the class levels, and this one running in a first graded stakes in France did not light the world on fire. You can also see that she never really carried a whole lot of weight, and that's something I look for in Europe, because the more weight they carry, the more serious a horse they're considered to be, and their odds are generally shorter. So when you see a horse who doesn't run with over 130 pounds or more, that tends to tell me that maybe they're not considered to be so great. Likely this one wants more firm ground, which of course you're going to get at Gulfstream. But I'm just not confident this one's going to fire an A effort right off the bench. And at 9-2, I think that's too short a price, so Juice as a toss. Super Hoity Toity is kind of interesting. Mark Casse trains, and the thing you want to take note of right away is that Patrick Husbands, her normal rider in Canada, is on board for this one. Now, I don't know if he came in just for this race or not, but I think that's a really good sign. Live Oak Plantation is an A outfit. Charlotte Weber usually puts out some good ones. So this one has also won quite a bit. Granted, the buyers haven't been so high, and most of her better efforts have been on synthetic surface. But I think a debut at 4, this one could potentially run a pretty nice effort. And I tend to think that at 12-1, this is some pretty good value. So I think this one you probably want to use. Cafe Society is a Shug McGahee and owned by Joseph Allen, and it's usually the recipe for success, but this one has had a lot of trouble closing the deal. You see an awful lot of seconds and thirds, and it's mostly at the optional claiming, not the stakes level, so that's got to give you pause. Generally, when horses have that issue and they move up in class, it's a recipe for disaster. Shug McGahee's obviously a great trainer and can get the most out of this one, but I'm just not sure this one stacks up here and seems a little unreliable. So on the bottom of the exotics, I think you could definitely use this one in the Tri or the Super and maybe even the Exacta, but I don't think this one is a bona fide win candidate. So for this purpose, pick 5 purpose, she's a toss. Market segmentation, Buyer-wise, it certainly has an edge over the rest of the fields. Trained by Chad Brown and Rod Ortiz and owned by Clairvaux Stables, A-level connections for sure. But this one in the last race was caught late, which is really a bad sign on a running line. It definitely, it was her first effort around in graded stakes, but you would have liked to think that if this one was on the upswing, that would have been able to deal with that, and especially as the favorite, would have been able to close out the deal and get the win. So got a little bit of reservations. I've never been overly high on this horse, and is definitely, you have to use her for sure in this spot, but I think maybe we can find some value where we might be able to beat her. Kahiko is 30 to 1, and that's immediately I have to look and see what we've got here. Sometimes that's more often than not, that's a toss, except in this case. This one has been improving in the last two starts, and the most important thing to note is she's improving as the class level increases. And so I think that's the recipe for a nice race in this one. Now, I don't know if she's got enough to close the deal, but I'm willing to take a chance at 30 to 1 because it's just such a great price. And I think she ran against a nice field last time, and she was only 3 lengths out of it. So, I think this one has definitely some upside. It's her third straight different jockey. That's kind of one that, you want to be concerned about a little bit. Paco's on the 1, and Rod Ortiz is on market segmentation. So, but those are A trainers they normally run for. So this one might be a sleeper, and I'm willing to take the chance in this race. Like I said, I'm not overly certain market segmentation is a real solid favorite, so why not at a price? Princess Theorem ran her best race in her last one in the Honey Fox. She kept on, closed when the most of the running was done on the early end in this race. And so to keep on and get third, I think is a very good sign. She's got Jose Ortiz on her, who knows how to do it. And I think this one's on the upturn. And I think she's a definite use. And at 8 to 1, I think that's a great value for a possible win candidate. Perseverancia, again, another one who just ran her best race in the last one in the Cardinal. But the problem is she went right to the bench after that, and that gives me a little bit of concern. She is trained by Cherie DeVoe, who's great with horses off a long layoff, so that's a positive. And this one's making her 5-year-old debut, and another jump forward is certainly likely. It looks like this one was trending that way towards the end of a 4-year-old year, and so I think you have to put her on the ticket because there is a great potential that she could really bust out. Arm Candy looks just a cut below to me. I can't really get excited about this one. Brendan Walsh off a layoff is okay, but for the most part they usually need one. And in this case, I think this one's a little outclassed, so Arm Candy would be a toss. So let's look at the second leg. The second leg of the late pick 5 is the 11th at Gulfstream. It is the Sanibel Island and ungraded stakes for 3-year-old fillies, run at 7.5 furlongs on the turf. Our first contestant is Lady Astor at 7 to 2. Lady Astor, Mrs. Astor. Top connections here: Mike Francesa's outfit, Augustin Stable. I believe Bill Parcells is also an owner. Luis Saez aboard, and Jonathan Thomas trains. Just broke her maiden, so this is a first against Stakes Company, coming off of a layoff. And she won pretty handily. There wasn't any issues, and this one looks like a move forward is logical. And I don't know that she was fully extended even in the last one when I was watching it. So I think there's definitely there's some more improvement possible and likely. So logical use for a win candidate, number 1. Love Appeals, number 2, is trained by Christophe Clement, who's a great turf trainer, as we know. I'm not sure that the class was necessarily the greatest in this last race. It's a repeat at the same distance. But it just, that's the only really issue I have. I mean, she had good kicks. She won it, won it well. but I'm just worried about the class jump here. Christophe Clement, he's really a trustworthy trainer. So if you like this one, I wouldn't talk you out of using. But on the ticket, I think I can find a little bit better value. So if you want to use this one, by all means. But I think I might want to find somebody with a little better price. Speaking of which, we have number 3, Riding Pretty. This one is had traffic issues in the stretch, but still had plenty of run. And it wasn't necessarily enough to overtake Danse Macabre, but it was a good effort, and it was done so at the stakes level, approximately at this distance of a mile. So I think another jump for this one is definitely in the offing. And, the fact that she's trained by Eddie Owens probably makes her a little bit of under the radar, and I kind of like that as well. So I'm going to expect better with this one, and I think at 5-1, we've got a really nice price, and I think a win possibility is there, so I'm going to use the 3. Forte Bella, I consider nothing more than a pace presence in this race. The Florida Oaks really didn't muster terribly much. The cutback in distance is going to help a little bit, but I just don't think this one is good enough, and so I think that she's a toss. Breath Away is interesting in that the last race, she really had every chance to win it and couldn't do it. And really was a big turnoff in that she just couldn't close the deal. Now, granted, it was on synthetic, but it doesn't, you want to see a little more heart than that from a horse. Again, another one trained by Christophe Clement. You certainly have to take them seriously. But I just have that in the back of my mind. And at 7-2, I think is an underlay. The class level between the maiden race and the option claimer didn't change. And granted, this one improved buyer-wise, but I just have that in the back of my mind about not being able to close the deal. Again, if you want to use her, if you like her, I'm not going to talk you out of her. But I don't think you can use both Clements in this race. I think you have to maybe choose one that you like better as a saver on the ticket. But I'm just not willing to back this one. I think I got better value with others. Mohawk Trail just isn't good enough. I think the Florida Oaks demonstrated that. There was, just the lack of class was just really evident in the stretch there. She kept on for a little while, but when the rubber met the road, this one just didn't have enough to compete. And I think this is a pretty good field, so I'm going to pass on Mohawk Trail. Lady Hamilton is trained by Safi Joseph. As we know, he's not so great in graded stakes, but he isn't bad at ungraded stakes. And he's got his A rider on this one, Edgar Zayas, but I question the class level with this one as well. The buyers just aren't there, and has a couple of wins, but you never want to see a horse in a stakes race who had to be dropped to the maiden claiming level to get the diploma. So those are the reasons that I don't like this one, and I'm going to toss. She's a Joy is, pretty much the same variety. I think this is a field horse and nothing more. Just simply not fast enough. Would need a quantum improvement off efforts against state breds in Florida. So I don't like this one. I don't see anything to get excited about. And so She's a Joy is a toss. Aunt Shirley has never run on turf. That would be a red flag with anybody if it wasn't Todd Pletcher training. He's got a Rod Ortiz on. Justifies great first-time turf, and he's got a Frankel mare underneath. If that doesn't say grass, I don't know what does. This one was not so great in the spinaway, that's true, but that wasn't turf. And so with a long layoff, debuting at 3 with a capable trainer, I think that Aunt Shirley you absolutely have to use, and hopefully you'll get a decent price. Metaphysical I really like in this race. Jeff Howes has been sneaky good. He's a good trainer, but stakes-wise he's been doing pretty well lately. And I really liked the effort this one put off in the Swedish Chant. Now, obviously, we were all preoccupied with that dynamite close that Cairo Consort had. You just don't see that too often. And Alpha Bella ran a really nice race and probably would have won had Cairo Consort not just decided to be Supergirl. Metaphysical was right there in the stretch and was poised and probably could have got up for second or so, but ran a really nice race. got no reason to believe this one won't take another move forward. And at 8-1, I think is a really square price. I think this one is a definite use and is a possible win candidate. So let's take a look at the third leg. The third leg of the late pick 5 is the 12th race at Gulfstream Park. It is the Grade 2 Gulfstream Park Oaks. It's a 1.16 mile run on dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And if we look at the field, number 1 is Flakes. This one comes off a state-bred N1X allowance race in which I had her in this one, and I really liked her. But I'm not sure if you consider the Forward Gal, where she really didn't do much running at all against a pretty good field. I'm fairly certain this one doesn't stick out class-wise, and she's a toss. I don't see enough here to get excited. Infinite Diamond kind of has the markings of a wise guy horse. A lot of people liked her for the Devona Dale, but she really wasn't going to stand up to Red Carpet Ready, and but for Darth Vader and Guns and Graces flying late. She really, it wasn't that bad as it looks. I mean, she was still in it, but she was no threat to win really at any juncture of the race. Still, there's some ability here, and I wouldn't put it past Patrick Biancone to have this one run a good race second off the layoff. And so at 6-1, I don't think that's bad value. And really the chaotic nature of the 3-year-old filly division this year, you just can't hang your hat on anybody really. So why not use this one as a possible upsetter? So I think the 2 is a use. Just Catherine is, she should definitely like more ground. There's no question about that. I just wonder if she's got enough in the tank to move forward and compete with the better ones in this race. I didn't really see a whole lot to get me awful excited about her maiden score. And so I really, at 15-1, I mean, it's decent value, and maybe you use this one on the underneath for the try of the Super, but I'm not really excited if this one is a win candidate. Affirmative Lady has the advantage of having run around 2 turns 3 times, and looks pretty comfortable doing so. I'm not sure the speed is there, but it is the 3rd race in her form cycle. And she has steadily, she makes improvement from race 1 to 2 to 3, and this is now race number 3. So I think we can expect a nice race out of this one. Whether or not it's good enough, I think this one is more one you use in the exotics underneath. But I think there's some talent here. I'm just not sure this one would have enough to be a win candidate. But 10-1's a nice price, and I think in the exotics you definitely can use. Miracle is trained by Todd Pletcher, got a Rod Ortiz on her, and is owned by Windstar Farm. That's A-level connections. And this one ran a really nice race in the Rachel Alexandra. Pretty mischievous. Didn't do so well in New Orleans, but prior to that has been doing very well and was the leading 3-year-old. So I don't think we're going to knock Miracle too much for getting a close second like she did. I think that was a really positive effort. Being second off the layoff here, I think she's definitely going to build on it. If the filly division wasn't what it is this year, I would likely single this horse. Excuse me, I don't see any other speed to compete with her, and I think she's going to be able to get on an easy lead and might very well likely wire this field. So Miracle is a use, and if you're really bold, you could even single. Atomically, I've never really been a big fan of this horse, I have to be honest. A lot of people were on this horse for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I was not. They all got excited about her race prior at Gulfstream, and it was okay, but she's kind of a loper. She's kind of slow to get going, and I think that's going to be a big disadvantage in this race. The Forward Gal, she really didn't do a whole lot of running. It wasn't really a great, wasn't really a factor ever in the race. But it was first off a layoff, and this one could certainly build off of it. Todd Pletcher's a nice trainer. Let's just say I like Miracle a little bit more. I think you got to put this one on the ticket, but I'm not as excited about her win possibilities as I am with number 5. So 6 is kind of a defensive use, but I think you have to use. Sacred Wish has never run around 2 turns and is just broke her maiden, and did so in the restricted company at Oaklawn. So I think the class level was a little light, and you couple that with the fact that George Weaver's not so great with first-time routes for his horses. So I think this one, maybe down the road, might be okay, but I'm not willing to take this one at 9-2 for doing something for the first time. So Sacred Wish for the pick 5 is a toss, but you maybe can think about her underneath. Darth Vader, came from out of nowhere in the Devona Dale. I mean, 46-1, and won it pretty impressively, you'd have to say. Just looked in complete command and was clearly the best horse on the day. But it wasn't at 1 turn, and this is a 2-turn race, and Gervin is not the greatest 2-turn sire. So there's a couple of things that are working against this one. The other thing is you're just not going to get anywhere near the price you got last time. This one will likely be short because of that last effort. However, I think you sort of have to use, because this one has displayed some talent, and I'm gonna use this horse, but I think Miracle's a better bet to win. So let's take a look at the 4th leg. The 4th leg of the pick 5 is the 13th race at Gulfstream Park. It's the Arthur Appleton, an ungraded stakes run on turf at a mile for 4-year-olds and up. The first runner we have is He's Pure Gold. It's a wheelhouse distance for this one. He's got 3 firsts, a second, and 3 thirds in 7 starts. So he obviously loves the distance. Coupled with the fact that Kelly Breen is 37% with third off the layoff with a $7 ROI. I mean, that's enough for me to definitely use this one as a win candidate. He's coming third off his layoff. Did okay against Emmanuel in the last race, and he improved his position. That's a sign that this horse is ready to run another good one. So I'm taking him. Super Dormy was really rank in his last start, and he didn't really build off his prior effort, which was pretty good at the optional claiming level. I think this one could rebound from that. Marty Drex was having a really nice meet, and he's 50% with third off the layoff and a $4.80 ROI at 20-1. Why not? For ticket size, I mean, this one you can go either way with, but I think you have some nice value. And if you're willing to spend a couple extra dollars, I think this is one that, certainly if he wins, he blows the ticket wide open. So I would think about using him for sure. Grace Fable is another late runner, and he's 8 years old, and he's not bad, but I just have a feeling he's not going to be able to offer up a winning effort here. He looks a little slow to get going. And, he may be reaching the end of the rainbow here. So 10-1 isn't a bad price. And if you like him, use him. But for me, he's going to be a toss. Striker is an early runner, and he's a little fella. And that was the first thing I noticed when I watched his last race. He looked awful good on the front end. Granted, it was an optional claimer, so the class level is a big step up here. But he looked good running on the engine. Nobody really came to get him, and he just took off. So those are all good signs. There is other early speed in this race, so I think he's going to have a difficult time getting the same type of trip. And his prior efforts in stakes races haven't been so great. Granted, they were sprints. But I'm going to look elsewhere because I think the presence of other speed makes it difficult for this one to get the trip. Number 5 is Fort Washington. He's got A-level connections. Shug and Peter Brandt and Jose Ortiz as a jockey. Made a really nice debut at 4 years old in the Canadian turf. I think he'll certainly build on that, and he's a late runner, and there is enough early speed for him to run to. So I think you have to use him, and if you get 4-1, I think that's a good price. So he's a use. Steady On. This is what he wants to do. He's 2 for 2 at this distance. He lost to Emmanuel last time, but that's no sin. I mean, he ran well. He's got A-level connections. He's going to get bet down because of Irad. We all know this. But I think this one is clearly a fit here, and he's certainly a win candidate, and you definitely have to use him. Win from Within suffers from the fact that strikers in this race as well. They both want to do the same thing, get to the lead. So I think they compromise both their chances. This one's saltier, to be sure, and I'd like his chances a little bit more. But there's just others in this race that I prefer, and I think it's hard, be really tough for him to wire this field, and that's what he'd have to do. So he's a toss. Lucky Kerwin is just come out of a $50,000 claimer, and now you're sending him into stakes company against a pretty smart bunch. I don't see it. He's just not good enough. He's a field horse to me, so he's a toss. Churchtown is sort of the same variety. I'm just not sure he's run against the class level that would make him competitive here. Granted, it is his debut at 4 years old, and he's got Luis Saez on him, which is always a good thing. But again, he's another one who wants to be on the engine early, and you've got other speed in here, so I don't really like his chances, so he's a toss. Roaring 40s, I just don't really see it. You look here, he just hasn't done so great at the stakes level. Most of his better efforts have been at lesser classes, and he's 7 years old, so I don't expect room for improvement here. So I think he's more of a field horse than anything else, and he's a toss for me. County Final is by Safi Joseph. Safi Joseph, while being a very good trainer, is 0 for 12 with the first route on turf. And I think that's enough for me. This one looks marginal at best. I think he's, again, one to fill out the field. And I don't see enough to get excited about to use this one in any capacity. So he's a toss. Dreams of Tomorrow was kind of interesting. Shug McGahee trains him, and he's by the Phipps stable. And he's got Javier Castellano on him. Those are all positives. This one, you know, I'm a little dubious about his class level, and that's odd to say with a Phipps horse, to be sure. But a 6-year-old from the Phipps stable who's not running in stakes races routinely, it kind of bothers me. He won his last race. He did a really nice optional claimer win at Tampa, where Shug was having a really good meet. But other than that, he's been kind of okay. And his last effort in the stakes was in the Bernard Baruch, and it was at unyielding turf at Saratoga, and he finished a beaten fourth. So I don't know what to make of him. Could he, in this field, could he maybe get underneath? I think that's more likely to place in the exotics. But I'm not sure this one has enough to be a win candidate. So let's take a look at the last race. The last race is the 14th at Gulfstream, and it is a 1.125 Florida Derby, Grade 1. I'll refer you to the video I did on this, breaking the race down completely, but suffice it to say, we're going to single in this race. Forte is towering over this field, and while he is in the 11 hole, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue given the class level of the rest of the field. And I just think it's way too logical, and I really don't see anybody who could conceivably beat him. You just have to go with it. And plus, for ticket size, you know, that allows us to spread other places where I think that you have to. So Forte is our lone win candidate in this one. And if he beats us, he beats us. But I don't see anybody who realistically can give him a challenge. So here's what our late pick 5 ticket looks like. The 10th race, we're going to use 6, 7, 8, 9, followed in the 11th by 1, 3, 9, and 10. The 12th, we're going to use 5, 6, and 8. And incidentally, if you want a single miracle, I wouldn't talk you out of it. And if you're on a limited budget, I would do that. And in the 13th, we're going to use 1, 2, 5, 6, and we're going to single Forte in the Florida Derby. The total wager is $96. Now, that's if you do it on the caveman level. However, if you use Ticketmaker in the ABC grid, you can definitely lower the price of this ticket to make it more economical for you. So that's our late pick 5, and I think the fact that we can comfortably single Forte in the Florida Derby allows us to spread and get some nice value into our tickets with those other races. It's a good competitive day of racing. There's a lot of stakes races at Gulfstream, so it should be a fun day, and I wish you the best of luck in your wagers. And I hope this helps if you were thinking about the pick 5. If you like what you see here, of course, always please like and subscribe, and we really do appreciate it. And keep those comments coming. I really love to hear the input from you guys. It makes for a fun endeavor, and I like the way this community is developing. So let's keep it moving. Talk to you soon.